Hello, everyone. My name is Charlotte, and I'm 36 years old. I was once married to Matthew, who was 3 years my junior. The age difference never bothered us until recently. I met Matthew at a party hosted by my friend Grace. Grace and Matthew knew each other from the gym. Matthew was a strikingly handsome man with a well-defined jawline and a robust build. He was also charismatic and always in high spirits. At that time, I was single, and Grace was eager to play matchmaker. During the party, Grace introduced me to every eligible bachelor there, including Matthew. "Hey, Matthew, meet Charlotte, my friend who's not only smart but also quite the catch financially," she announced. Embarrassed, I tried to downplay it, but Grace went on, "Don't be shy, it's a compliment." I managed a smile and thanked Grace, hinting that she could have also mentioned my other qualities. Grace quickly agreed, saying, "Absolutely, she's not just beautiful but also incredibly intelligent. You two enjoy your evening. I'll mingle with the other guests." Once Grace left, Matthew curiously asked why she called me a nerd. I explained, "I'm a graphic designer and work for a software company. My job keeps me busy, which means I rarely have time to socialize, earning me the nerd label among friends." Matthew was impressed. "That's fascinating, and I guess that's why they refer to you as the millionaire nerd." We both laughed, and that evening was spent in enjoyable conversation, deepening our connection. As our relationship progressed, Matthew and I began spending more time together, enjoying dinners and coffees after he'd pick me up from work. He was working as an assistant at a local firm. A few months into dating, Matthew proposed. Although I loved him, I hesitated, worried about the brevity of our relationship and our age difference. "Matthew, are you sure about this? We've only been together a short time, and besides, you're 3 years younger. Are you serious about us?" I asked, hoping for reassurance. "Oh, come on, Charlotte. Are you still hung up on that old-fashioned idea that the husband should be older than the wife?" Matthew questioned with a light-hearted tone, trying to ease my concerns. "It's not really about that for me," I responded, slightly defensive. "I was just wondering if it bothered you in any way." "Chill, Charlotte. You're a modern woman. These kinds of old notions shouldn't trouble you," Matthew reassured me, his voice full of encouragement. Gradually, Matthew convinced me that our future as a married couple looked promising. I agreed, and we soon met each other's families to share our decision. While my father, Peter, didn't voice any concerns and seemed genuinely happy about the wedding, my mother pulled me aside to have a private conversation. "Charlotte, honey, I hope you've talked about your finances with Matthew," she whispered, her expression marked with a hint of worry. "Yes, Mom, don't worry about that," I assured her. She continued, "I just want to make sure that your career success, since you're doing so much better than Matthew, doesn't become a problem. You know, men can sometimes feel overshadowed by these things." "Mom, Matthew is really sweet and understanding. He doesn't have those kinds of hang-ups. He's even agreed to take on more household chores since my schedule is so packed," I explained, trying to put her concerns to rest. "That's good to hear, dear. Just take care," she said, her voice softening. That conversation, however, triggered some thoughts. I realized I had never discussed finances in depth with Matthew, nor had I asked him about his earnings. My financial independence meant I wasn't particularly concerned about his income, yet I recalled that Matthew had asked about my salary even before proposing. For a while, these thoughts worried me, but I decided to put them aside, choosing instead to focus on the excitement of starting our married life together. After the wedding, we celebrated with a honeymoon in Hawaii, a trip generously sponsored by my company as a wedding gift. We relished our time together, fully embracing the joys of our new union. However, about a month later, Matthew approached me after dinner with a serious look on his face. "Honey, I'm sorry to ask you this, but I need your help," he started, appearing uneasy. "What's up, Matthew? Is everything all right?" I asked, concerned. "Well, no. My parents are facing some issues." They live in an apartment on the second floor, and without an elevator, it's becoming difficult for them as they get older, he explained. Understanding the situation, I suggested, I see. Why don't you move them to a ground floor unit or somewhere with an elevator? Matthew hesitated, then sidestepped my suggestion. Actually, Charlotte, I was thinking more along the lines of building a house for them, he admitted, catching me by surprise with his proposal. Okay, I hope you realize how expensive it is to build a house, I said, trying to gauge Matthew's understanding of the financial commitment he was suggesting. Yeah, I know that, Matthew replied, but his tone lacked confidence. Do you have enough savings, or are you considering taking out a loan? I probed further, hoping he had a plan. Matthew looked uneasy for a moment before responding. Charlotte, I was actually hoping you could lend me the money to build the house. His request caught me off guard. I was stunned and unsure what to say next. Huh? What? But you know I've been saving to buy my own house someday, right? Yeah, but since you earn well, I thought it wouldn't be a problem for you, Matthew said, his voice taking on a more assertive edge. But Matthew, I'm not sure I can lend that much money, I responded, feeling pressured. Why not? He persisted, becoming visibly frustrated. I was at a loss for words and managed to say, Okay, let me think about it. I'll let you know. Sure, I'll wait for your help, he said, leaving the conversation hanging as I spent a sleepless night pondering the wisdom of lending my hard-earned savings for his parents' house. My money was meant for my future security, including buying my own home and a comfortable retirement. The next morning, as I was heading out to work, Matthew hugged me and said, I'll be waiting for your decision. Let's talk over the weekend. I know you're in a rush now. Feeling uneasy and conflicted, I sought advice from a colleague at work. She suggested making the financial arrangement official with a contract. Have Matthew sign an agreement that ensures he repays you, she advised, emphasizing the importance of protecting my interests. This sounded like a prudent approach. That evening, I told Matthew, I can lend you the money, but you'll need to sign a contract agreeing to repay me within 4 years. To my surprise, Matthew readily agreed. Okay, I'll sign it, he said when I presented the papers, though his laughter when I mentioned the legal implications showed he hadn't fully grasped the seriousness of the situation. No, I'm serious, Matthew. Here are the papers, I insisted, holding his gaze until he realized I wasn't joking. Fine, I'll sign, he said with a smirk and signed the documents. I transferred the money, but despite the legal safeguard, I still felt uneasy. Matthew's salary wasn't substantial, and I doubted his ability to repay the loan. After signing the contract, Matthew's behavior started to change, becoming increasingly peculiar, which only added to my apprehensions about the decision I had made. Matthew's behavior had drastically changed since the loan. He started coming home late, often too exhausted to help around the house. Whenever I voiced my frustrations, he brushed them off, claiming his job kept him busy. My feelings for him began to fade as he became increasingly distant, spending most weekends overseeing the construction of his parents' new home, and sometimes not coming home at all, opting instead to stay at his parents' place. The situation was taking a toll on me, and I decided it was time to confront Matthew about his recent actions. Matthew, do you realize how distant you've become? It feels like you're taking advantage of living here without contributing anything. His response was dismissive and sharp. What do you mean? How dare you accuse me like that? You knew my financial situation when we married. You chose this. I was stunned by his audacity. Excuse me? I'm not looking to argue, Matthew, but how can you be so indifferent? I'm even more upset about this housewarming party at your parents' new place tomorrow. A party for the house I funded, which you never even told me was finished. Matthew seemed to almost scoff at my reaction. Oh, my bad. I must have forgotten. Please be our guest, he said nonchalantly, then left the house humming, as if unbothered by the gravity of our conversation. Fuming with anger, I wanted to lash out and break something, but I managed to collect myself. An hour later, I received a call from my mother-in-law. "Hello, hi. Just calling to let you know we're having a housewarming party at the new house tomorrow," she said casually. I hung up without responding further, feeling certain that Matthew had prompted her to invite me, not out of genuine desire, but as an afterthought. His indifference and the casual invitation from his mother left me deeply hurt and questioning the foundations of our relationship. Initially, I had reservations about attending the housewarming party because of the underlying tension between Matthew and his mother, who had never really taken the time to get to know or like me. Her cold demeanor from our first meeting through to after our wedding made me wary. Despite this, I was concerned that if I skipped the event, Matthew and his mother might use it as an opportunity to criticize me further, perhaps suggesting I was envious of their new home. Reluctantly, I decided to attend, determined to maintain a composed demeanor, albeit a forced one. As I arrived at the newly built house, I noticed the entrance was adorned with beautiful floral decorations. Matthew and his mother were welcoming guests warmly. My mother-in-law's reaction upon seeing me was less than enthusiastic. "Oh, you came. I thought you wouldn't bother," she remarked with a hint of surprise. "Why would you think that?" Matthew chimed in before ushering me inside. Inside, I was greeted more warmly by my father-in-law, who was sitting alone. His genuine smile and the sincere gratitude he expressed for my financial help were the only comforting moments of the evening. It was clear that neither Matthew nor his mother had acknowledged my contribution to their new home. Throughout the event, I felt isolated as Matthew and his mother barely interacted with me, leaving me to engage in half-hearted conversations with distant relatives. I was counting down the moments until I could leave what felt like an increasingly toxic atmosphere. After the guests had departed, I approached my father-in-law to say goodbye. "Take care of yourself," I said kindly. Just then, my mother-in-law interjected sharply, "You don't need to worry about my husband. Focus on your husband instead of neglecting him." Confused and upset, I responded, "What do you mean? I've never neglected Matthew. He volunteered to help with chores because I work full-time as well." Her accusations grew harsher. "You've been a terrible wife, forcing my son to do all the work around the house. And how could you coerce him into signing that financial agreement? You've been nothing but cruel to him." "I haven't forced Matthew into anything. The agreement was mutual to ensure financial security." "How can you say I've abused or tortured him?" I replied, shocked by her claims. At that moment, my father-in-law stood up for me. "Marilyn, stop! Why are you attacking her instead of appreciating what she's done for us?" But she wasn't having any of it. "Just stay out of this and go inside," she snapped at him. The situation was incredibly painful, and it was clear that no amount of reasoning would change her view of me. The evening left me more disillusioned with my relationship and family dynamics than ever before. I was completely taken aback by Marilyn's rude behavior towards Alan, and then her harsh words turned towards me. "You should be grateful my son even married you. Who else would marry someone old and unattractive like you?" she sneered. Her words stung, and I lost my temper. "How can you speak to me like this?" I retorted, my voice rising with my frustration. Matthew quickly intervened, scolding me. "Charlotte, watch your language. How dare you raise your voice at my mother?" "Didn't you hear how she just insulted me?" I replied, bewildered by his lack of support. Matthew dismissed me with a roll of his eyes. "I can't deal with your tantrums anymore." "My tantrums? Do you see how both you and your mother are treating me?" I exclaimed. "I can't stand to be around this negativity any longer. I don't want any part of this in my new dream home. Just get out." Matthew's response was cold and cutting. "What? Yes, I don't want to live with someone as despicable as you. You've been living off my income and now you call me trash? You're pathetic, Charlotte. Let's be clear. You married me because you thought you couldn't land someone as handsome as me given your age and looks. even though I wasn't earning much. So, you have no right to complain about money now. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. I can't stay with someone so shallow. I want a divorce and I want my money back, I yelled. Matthew laughed maliciously. Sure, go ahead and get your divorce, but remember, you'll have to pay me if you want it. What the hell? You should be the one to pay since you want the divorce, I argued back. Matthew's demeanor turned sinister, revealing a side of him I hadn't seen before. You'll have to give back the money I lent you or I'll sue you, I threatened. Go and find your stupid papers first, he retorted mockingly. Feeling numb and utterly defeated, I left the scene. They had both insulted and degraded me beyond endurance. I went straight to the bank where I had secured the papers in a locker, only to discover that the document was missing. When I checked the bank log, I saw that Matthew had accessed the locker a month ago. We had opened this joint account after our wedding, intended for both of our earnings, but it turned out I was the only one contributing. This revelation only added to my shock and sense of betrayal. After the unsettling discoveries, I checked my wardrobe where I'd also kept a copy of the loan agreement. It, too, was missing. All these events made it painfully clear how deeply Matthew had manipulated our relationship from the very beginning. His charm at Grace's party, his interest in my financial status, living comfortably off my earnings, and then emotionally pressuring me to finance his parents' house, every move was calculated. His final act was to attempt theft of the agreement to prevent me from claiming my money back. But I had anticipated some form of deceit. Sensing Matthew's possible betrayal over time, I had taken the precaution of keeping the original documents at my parents' house while storing copies in the bank and my wardrobe. Despite the emotional turmoil and the insults I endured, I was relieved I had trusted my instincts to get the agreement signed and keep it secure from Matthew. I immediately called my mom and explained everything. She was furious upon hearing how I had been treated and suggested suing Matthew and his mother for their actions. During our conversation, she confessed she had always harbored doubts about Matthew's intentions. Did you know about Matthew's motives? I asked her. No, not precisely, but I sensed his eagerness wasn't genuine. He rushed into the marriage so quickly, she replied. You're right, Mom. I should have been more cautious. When I came home once, you asked if we had discussed our finances, and I lied, saying we had. I never really did. Nor did I inquire about his earnings because I wasn't concerned about his money. Take this as a lesson, dear. Don't trust someone so readily, she advised me. With a heavy heart but a clear mind, I hired a lawyer and prepared the divorce papers. I included an official notice demanding that Matthew repay the borrowed amount within 4 years. If he failed to comply, the court would be authorized to sell his property to reimburse me. Matthew and his mother were caught off guard when they received the divorce papers and the repayment notice. Suddenly, they were the ones feeling desperate, trying to reach out to me, but I was resolved to see through my decision and protect myself from further deceit. I ignored all their attempts to contact me, blocking their numbers. Matthew even tried reaching out to my parents, but they dismissed his calls as well. He left a voicemail on my office phone, apologizing and professing his love, claiming he was misled by his mother's influence and expressing hope for reconciliation. However, Matthew's history of manipulating my emotions for his schemes had taught me to be wary. I deleted the voicemail and ensured his number remained blocked. Matthew's lawyer later sent a message pleading for me to forgive at least 60% of the debt, citing Matthew's inability to meet the repayment terms due to his low salary. I dismissed this request outright. After everything, the deceit, the personal attacks, it was unthinkable to me that he expected any form of leniency. 4 years dragged by, and Matthew struggled to gather even half of the owed amount, resorting to taking out loans. Given his modest income, the bank's loan offerings were insufficient, forcing him to sell the house he had once banished me from. Ultimately, he had to move back into his parents' old apartment. Grace, a mutual friend, informed me that the local community had turned cold towards Matthew and his family after the truth emerged. Marilyn, his mother, resorted to working as a nanny, her behavior having alienated her from many. Matthew faced ostracization at work too, which led him to resign and relocate to another city. Even Alan, Matthew's father, left Maryland and moved to the countryside to live with his brother, seeking a peaceful retirement. Amid these developments, my personal life took a positive turn. I began dating Wayne, a 37-year-old colleague. We had known each other for years, but only connected romantically after interacting at an office party, a year following my divorce. This time, I approached the relationship with caution, taking time to understand and appreciate our connection before making any serious commitments. Reflecting on all these events, I felt no sympathy for Matthew or Marilyn, believing their outcomes were just repercussions of their actions. Meanwhile, I enjoyed the budding relationship with Wayne, cherishing our moments together and looking forward to what the future might hold.